It has started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending. We are the final conference of this wonderful event. We see faces that we know, so nice to meet you again. This has been a wonderful show. Thanks for sticking out. So today, we'll make a deal. We will set aside every generality about EVs that you probably have heard many times. We will set those aside in order to make room for data. We are two very technical guys, and we are delighted to have the occasion to share our data and knowledge with you guys today.
You're Charles.
I'm Charles. I'm a group manager at IVI. IVI is the Innovative Vehicle Institute, and so I manage the group called Technological Applications.
And I'm Philip. I'm the main data analyst for the project Heavy Fleet,
Plug-in fleet project, heavy-duty trucks.
Thanks. So we'll be covering 8,000 kilometers. Don't worry, your shoes won't get worn out too much. It's just words. So this project, which has been going for a while, we'll talk about who we are, IVI, what was the project, what came out of the route electrification analysis of the diesel trucks, and the experimentation with real electric trucks.
So it's a big project. Our goal is to increase EV uptake in the heavy-duty truck sector and raise awareness. But before that, a bit of context so that you understand better what we do usually. So the Innovative Vehicle Institute is a research center. We are a nonprofit center that does basically R&D projects. We are located in Saint-Jérôme, North Shore of Montreal, hence the thick French accent. Sorry for that. We hold two statuses. One is a CCTT, which is a technology transfer center, and then we have also on the federal level the accreditation for a technology access center. So what we do is we specialize in electric vehicles, of course, autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles as well. We are split in 4 different groups. 3 of them are pretty classic engineering structure, so software engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. But we also do we have a group that's a bit of the black sheep. It's ours, the one to which we belong. It's the technological applications. So you guessed it, we deploy technologies in new applications, and we assess the viability of EVs in new sectors. Currently, we have about 45 people on staff, more than 500 projects done in the past already, more than 25 years of experience. So it started in the year 99, 2000. You probably know a whole bunch of our customers. I won't bore you with the name of everyone. As I said, there's 500 of them. But to be short today, we've been involved in pretty much the vast majority of every EV project in Quebec since year 2000.
So the project Plug-in Fleet heavy-duty trucks, as mentioned a bit, this is a project that lasted 3 years. It's still ongoing, but nearing the end. We pretty much realized, well, electric cars are coming, people are getting used to them, electric trucks will be arriving soon, and fleet managers have a whole lot of questions regarding them. So we targeted local delivery, so trucks that stay within a range of about 160 kilometers from the depot, come back to the depot at night, and we wanted to see which of these local trucks around Montreal, around Quebec, could be electric today with the batteries that exist, that are available on the market. So we got a lot of many partners on this project. First of all, many thanks to the Environment Ministry in Quebec, which have granted us the funds to make this project. It's a 1.2 million grant. Then we got Hydro-Quebec, which is also a financial partner, a major partner. We got all the OEMs that sell electric trucks in the province to come on board this project, and many other organizations within the trucking industry in Quebec. We divided this project into 3 phases. Phase 1, which we call the information phase. It happened in fall of 2022. We basically did 2 big events where people could come do a workshop. We explained the basis, which we have skipped for this presentation now. That was 2 years ago. It was pretty much the first time in Canada you could attend an event, try trucks from 4 different companies all at once. We got over 80 transporters who attended and came and got the information they needed to get inspired and start an electrification process.
So from this pool of attendees that we called later on our audience, we gathered 20 participants and to pass on to the next phase, which we called, without any originality, phase 2. which is the telematics analysis. So we went on and instrumented with Geotab devices. Geotab is a partner of the project. So we instrumented 3 trucks for every fleet. So that's 60 trucks total for 3 months each. In order to be able to gather data 24/7, we gathered payload. We're going to cover that a bit later, but that's a that's a heavy lift. Gather payload for every trip of every day, and then find answers to the most pressing, the most urgent questions in the minds of the fleet managers. Is it possible to electrify? Is it profitable?
Then phase 3, this is the phase which is still ongoing now. Pretty much after we had these 20 participants, we selected the 5 with the most potential to be electric today. We got our partners, the OEMs, to lend them a truck for a month. We furnished them with a 50 kilowatt charger for the month. This is all free of charge for the participants. And the idea was to help them, without any risk, try the trucks, get acquainted with them in their fleets, in their real operations, complete the routes that we had measured during phase 2 with their diesel trucks.
We didn't mention it so far, but everything we do is public. So you can find on our website, pluginfleetproject.ca, a technical report and one-pagers as well, if you don't have time to read 40 pages. And so you can find everything that there is to know about our data that we found. So let's jump straight in. The trends that we observe, let's start with the electric modeling, or basically the observations on the diesel truck, where we modeled what would happen if they were electric.
So first off, a bit more information about that phase 2. It was a pretty long process. We started in December 2022 with our first participants, ended 9 months later. That's the time it took to analyze 60 truck, 28,000 routes. That means 28 times noting what the payload was for this route, which is, you guessed it, I said it, which is a lot of work. To get a real understanding of what the consumption would have been for this route. 818,000 kilometers, 16,000 hours of driving for this whole phase. We collected a lot of data. I'm not going to present it all, as Charles just said. Please do go and see in our reports. There's a lot of information on there. Just the red dots you see there are the stops that a truck made within its 3 months. We collected the distance he did, the hills, the speed, the payloads on a graph, how many hours it spent at the depot, and then we did a graph of how many kilowatt hours it would need to complete its days. We compared the TCO, the total cost of ownership, for a diesel versus an electric truck, and how much GHG emissions it would save if it was electric. So that's 30 seconds for 42 pages.
To give you a rough overview of what our sample is before we jump into the kilowatt hours section, let's just look at what's our sample on diesel trucks.
So out of the 60 trucks, there was 44 that were semis, or tractor trailers. 16 of them were straight trucks. Thank you. They go really fast. We looked at the 3 most important parameters to judge what would be the necessary kilowatt hours to complete a day. First one is the weight. So just to have an idea of the range of the weights of the truck. The lightest trucks we had in our analysis, they represent 1 truck. The lightest ones, they were carrying about 1 ton of payload on average per kilometer during the analysis. So really lightweight trucks. We didn't ask participants, please give us very light trucks. This is what, it's really transported in some trucks in Quebec. The heaviest ones are a lot heavier, obviously. 42 tons for the tractor is 3 and 4 axle territory. So we had really heavy trucks as well. Then we looked at the distance covered, obviously a big impact. This is the 90th percentile daily distance. So this is what you're looking at is the longest distance that what a truck would normally do. But this the shortest ones for the tractors, and then so it goes from 90 to 900 kilometers. We're kind of scratching our heads as to whether this is really local at 900 kilometers. Apparently it is.
Per day.
Per day. So this is the typical trucks that we observed. And then the percentage of time that he spends on the highway, which is going to take a lot of range. So for tractor trailers, between very little and quite a lot of time on the highway, and straight trucks, they spend a little less time. And pretty much what you can see there is that straight trucks are more consistent. So their speed, the range of speed, the range of weight and distance is quite consistent when you compare them to the tractor trailers. So we can expect their consumption to be very wide, very different from one to another.
So this is an overview of our diesel truck sample. Now we went ahead and built from scratch an algorithm in order to be able to translate every diesel trip into a need of kilowatt hours. How many energy do you need? Sorry, I just skipped the slide. We didn't mention it, but our straight bodies are really more similar from one application to another, whereas the semi-tractors greatly vary. You can see that the definition of local transportation, for us, the criteria was 160 kilometers around a single depot. That's considered local for Quebec. But you can see that for many people, it's a broader definition. It's more vague. We had folks run up to 700 kilometers per day.
Yeah, the surprising thing here is that the trucks actually stayed within that range, within that radius, but they still managed to cover 600, 700, 900 kilometers per day.
So then we translated those consumptions. Well, take into account payload, terrain, speed, every factor that comes into play in order to assess what would be the energy usage.
Exactly. So we collected liters per 100 kilometers. You're used to these units. With electric trucks, it's going to become kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, or so we hope, in Canada at least. And what you can see there's three main takeaways from this graph. This is what we estimated during phase 2. So if you're on a low payload, like 1 ton on average, and low average speeds, then you're going to be around 100, 125 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's roughly 8 times what your electric car consumes. If you're on average, some highway, average payloads, 10, 15,000 pounds, it's going to be about 150 to 175. And if you're over 225 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers estimated during the summer, that's pretty much 3-4 axle trailers with a full load driving at highway speeds. So there's quite a big range.
Okay then, so first crunchy slide. For who did it work? What proportion of our sample were, what proportions were green lights, red lights, and yellow lights? Take into account though that for it to be a green light is where it works. We went and kept a really severe criteria. A green light is where an electric truck could be, well, a diesel truck could be swapped overnight with an EV, and it would work seamlessly. So without any stopping for charging, only stopping for charging, well, only charging at night. Same trips, same payloads, same hills, same everything. Roughly a quarter of our sample would be electrificable easily. And then red light, we'll define it a bit later, but you guessed it, doesn't work. And yellow ones were, scenario. We have to scratch our heads a bit and find or make winning conditions.
Exactly. So these are all the trucks, all the 60 trucks here. You can see the green dots. It's easy to see for the distance covered. They're the ones who cover the least distance with not too much weight. And as you go further into the distance, the daily distance, it becomes yellow or red. We can see also we have a line showing what's the best-in-class nominal range. So we compared to that, you can see it's true the green doesn't quite reach the nominal range. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that trucks can't reach the advertised range. What it means is what we were aiming at providing was a recommendation for a truck all year round in Canada, in the Quebec winter, in the cold. So if it works, if it stops where it's green and it works, it means it works all year round for this truck. We said it, when it's green, pretty much you can complete all your routes year-round without adaptation. You just swap over your diesel truck for an electric one tomorrow. It works fine. If it's yellow, it's not over yet. You still have some hope. Some trucks, it was very easy. Well, one truck, for example, he was carrying over 80,000 pounds. Manufacturers right now, they don't officially authorize going over this. The trucks can handle it fine. They have the power. It's just a matter of getting an extra authorization, a special one. One truck didn't have a positive ROI because it wasn't kept long enough. And some of them, they just require some adaptation. When we put them yellow, it's because it was a simple adaptation. Sometimes the participant himself had told us, oh, I could do this, I could try that. So fine, it's not working as is, but if you do the adaptation you proposed, it will become a green. And the red ones, well, they generally just require a bigger or a much bigger battery than what's currently on the market.
Let's speak a bit about TCO, which is the total cost of ownership. Let's talk dollars for a while.
So we looked here at the profitability or the financial benefit. You can see it starts at below zero. Obviously, the truck in Quebec with the incentives It still costs a bit more, the electric truck, to buy than the diesel counterpart. And throughout the years, between 5, 6, 8, or 10 years, most of them will go above that zero line. There's one, you can see it's only kept 5 years, and the ROI is, well, between 2.5 and 7 years. And what you see there, the steeper the hill, that's for a very good reason. It means the truck is just driving more. So the more you drive, the more you save on fuel. The steeper the hill is going to be, up to nearly $200,000 in savings. And to give you an idea, that truck, we said it's short distance. They work over 1 shift per day. So he's only doing 36,000 kilometers per year. It's not, he doesn't have to go to the moon and back every day. It's still very good savings from such short distances.
This is a simplified chart. Of course, it's taking into account everything we could think about. So the truck acquisition, the EVSE, which is the charging station, acquisition, installation, maintenance over the years, disposal of the truck, everything was taken into account into a big model.
We did the same for the environmental benefits, still considering the Quebec market, so hydroelectricity mix. Same thing as for the money, pretty much. You start below zero, so we considered the manufacturing of the battery, and then you start going up above. The difference is, especially because it's hydroelectricity, you go above zero very, very, very quickly. The fastest one was 3 months, so after only 3 months of use, the truck would be cleaner than its diesel counterpart. And the longest one, it's still very, very short, 13 months. Still for the same 30-something thousand kilometers per year with maximum savings of 600 tons after the end of its life.
Let's look at our sample of diesel trucks and split them by applications sector or types of operations. So the most popular sector that we had in the semi-tractors was the dry goods delivery or dry goods transportation. So you could eyeball that roughly for a third of our sample in the dry goods sector. It made sense to electrify. The ROI is positive. It is cleaner to drive the truck, and the battery capacity falls below what's available today. So green lights. Now for the pendulum applications, not a sector per se, it's more of a way of operating. A pendulum is what we call it when it's the trucks drive from point A to point B, back to point A on a 24/7 basis or 24/5. So typically those are shorter legs, so 5, 7, 10, 15 kilometers one way, and then the truck will repeat that day after day, hour after hour. So those are typically good to be on the lookout for. These are really positive for the electrification. It's easier to electrify those. Now for the liquids, the bulk liquids, folks, unfortunately, sad news, you just carry simply too much weight. It's just physics. The battery capacities of today's models simply don't match what's required. Same goes for bulk handling and forestry applications.
So those were the trucks we had in our analysis. You may know of some other applications with bulk liquids that go a lot less distance. Those were the ones we had. Same goes for the straight trucks. A small portion were electrified today with the dry goods and the TRUs, so the refrigerated units. The ones we had in the analysis, they had the refrigerating analysis unit. They had a longer box. They had 2 axles, so they were quite heavy. So they couldn't be electrified as of now.
So as a recap, dry goods looking good, pendulum routes looking good. It's a scenario for TRUs. We have to wait on the technology to be a bit more available on the refrigeration units. And then for bulk liquids or dry and forestry, sadly, for today, it's a red light. What would be the easy checklist then to be on the lookout for?
Well, we compiled this checklist to give you a sense of how it could be easy to electrify a truck. So if you can tick all these boxes, you're pretty much a green case. So less than 200 kilometers per day, you can be assured it's going to be feasible with a truck that's available on the market. Return to base, no accessories, low payload, low speeds. If you don't tick all these boxes, it's not a lost cause. You might still be in the yellow, and you just have to see what's the adaptation required to make it work. So it becomes a choice between wait or optimize. So if you're in the yellow, you can wait basically until the technology adapts to your operations, or you can optimize. In other words, you can start your journey, start experimenting, and start probably, most likely, saving money right now.
Right. Jumping into what we call the e-trial. So that's the phase of the project, the final phase, the crunchy part, where we lent electric trucks to different fleets. On the pictures, you see 4 scenarios. We have 5 in the project. One is yet to be announced. It will be done next week. So we will cover the 4 that are past us. So as a recap, we lent the trucks for free. They are put into real-world operations where winning scenarios were previously found. And so multiple makes and models across all of our partners, 50 kilowatts installed on site, as you see on the picture, 24/7 data collection, payload collection, driver feedback collection on a daily basis. That's really highly important. A kickoff training for the drivers so that they're not left empty-handed when it starts on the first Monday shift. And then a wrap-up event every time to bring back the industry to be able to share the experience, how it went. Let's start with the first one.
Yeah, first trial was a Freightliner e-Cascadia. We lent it to Internord, which is a LTL company up north in Saint-Jérôme, close to us. We chose them because, well, first of all, they were the ones with the steepest line for the ROI, very good ROI potential. Also very predictable, very stable route. They do 185 kilometers every day. They leave from Saint-Jérôme, they go to the east of Montreal, they do a few deliveries, they come back in the traffic. Easy peasy. After a few weeks, we had pretty much proved what we thought would happen. The truck would come back every night, 45, 50, 52% battery left. It helped reassure the driver. By that time, he was certain he could do it all year round. And when he was taking his breaks, or at the end of the day, he would say that to his colleagues, and it would reassure his colleagues as well. So that was very, very positive. After a few weeks, he didn't grow tired of the truck itself, but we had covered this topic, so they decided to try different routes. One day he went as far as 303 kilometers. He did trailer switches, which were heavier actually than this normal route. And he came back at night with 78%. Well, he had used 78% of the battery, which pretty much confirms that the truck can do its range.
Next up, we had a Peterbilt truck, a 579 EV model, partnered with Cascade Transport, which is in the pulp and paper industry. The interesting thing about that application is that it was a pendulum route, so a 7-kilometer leg that they do back and forth, so 14 back and forth, 12 times per day, actually per shift. It's important because the truck drives from point A to point B, but we unfortunately had to install the charger at location C. What is C? C is where the truck sleeps. That happens. The truck might drive all day from A to B and sleep at C. We had constraints, we had to install the charger there. So for one shift, perfect success, everyone loved it. However, in order for the TCO to make sense and for them to be convinced that, okay, they want to take on electrification with this route, they would have required to test 2 shifts back to back. And that would have required a charger of higher power, which would have driven the TCO to be a bit lower, and then the charging to be available on another location.
Third trial was Smart Transport, a smaller company in Montreal. They got to try a Lion 6. This was the trial we did in the winter. Well, we chose Smart Transport because, well, first of all, they were a yellow dot. So when we did their analysis, phase 2, we said, well, it doesn't quite work with the current trucks. They told us, that's fine, we really want to try an electric truck. It so happens that we dispatch our routes the day before. We'll just, it's variable from one day to another. We'll just dispatch to clients which are closer to us and it'll make shorter routes. We said, that's fine, do this. They didn't do this. So it was middle of winter, they just chose to, well, they worked out really quickly that the truck just could do exactly the distance they did during phase 2, and they did that. They did, on average, the same distance as we had measured with their diesel truck. We had some days at minus 15, it was still fine. And to ensure they didn't have too much electricity costs, they're a small business with a small warehouse, they even asked us to reduce the charger power to 30 kilowatts. Took a bit longer, but it made sure they didn't pay extra electricity. And you can see it there. For a whole month of operation, $316 in electricity cost.
That's close to nothing. And actually, Smart Transportation went on and bought a Lion 6 truck a few weeks after the trial. So that's a huge success story for us. We basically convinced the fleet to begin a transition. Another thing about that one is it's a smaller fleet. We didn't mention it, but it's a 15-truck fleet, so it's not only accessible for larger fleets. It might work for smaller fleets as well. So last one that we've done so far is the Kenworth truck with Sleeman Breweries. So it's a brewery, but they distribute beer. That's what they do with the trucks. They distribute beer, can, draft, bottle, around the region of Montreal. So the thing that's specific to them is that they had 5 drivers test drive the truck during the month of operation. And so it's unanimous. All drivers love them. We will show you the data. It's not us that say it, it's them. They experienced a snowstorm, though. We will come back on that later. And what they especially noted is the silence of operations. I said at the beginning that we were going to set aside the generalities that you may know already. Of course, EVs are silent, but for their application, it's crucial. They deliver beer like at 5 in the morning at a corner store that's in the middle of a suburb somewhere. The whole neighborhood is sleeping. So the customers of Sleeman have asked for electric trucks to come back. That's cool. And they also love the silence when they deliver beer in the really high crowded areas such as Old Montreal, the Old Port, and high traffic areas. Are you ready for a graph?
So that was the presentation of the general information about the EV trials. And now let's dig into the data we got from that.
I see some smiles. Yes, it's a big graph. Yes, it is noisy for the technical people in the room. It's kind of rare. I want to mention it. It's kind of rare that people will go and show these types of graphs publicly, but the intention of the project is to put out publicly data. So this is from, of course, our demos. Circles are from our demo, so Internode, Cascade, and then we removed Smart because it's a straight truck and not a semi. So these are semis. And the last one is Sleeman, and then you have the diamond-shaped points, which is a partner fleet that helps the project with data collection. So they have 5 different trucks of the same make and model, so that we're able to compare apples with apples. So it is noisy, but you can see clearly a trend. For now, it is a trend. It will be refined. The project is not finished. Every day that passes by, there's more data coming in. And so the trend for the quick people in the room, you've probably guessed it, you see the consumption gets doubled, but not during winter, during colder months. Colder months, in Quebec at least, it's December and January. And we've seen that across all of our EV deployment projects. It's more January that hurts. Kind of gets less worse in the other months.
Yeah, and even then it's not every day in January either. There's also a set of weird values at the end of the graph over there. You might have noticed, might have wondered. Well, we had a big snowstorm at the beginning of the month, or last month, and you can see all of the 6 trucks that were running on this day, they all had a very high consumption, which was at least as high as the coldest days of the winter. We'll get a bit more details again after.
Another way to look at the same data is if we plot or we graph the consumption against the temperature, the average temperature of every day of the project so far. So keep in mind that an average daily temperature of -10 might mean that it was -20 at the top of the morning. It's an average for the day. So a -13 as the minimum that we see here, it's a pretty cold day in Quebec. And what you see here, we haven't written the formulas, but basically the range gets cut in half in the worst of days of the winter, even for heavy-duty trucks. So maybe easier to take home for you guys is a table, not a graph. So your perfect conditions or ideal conditions will be spring, fall, summer. Best winter conditions are mild conditions, such as the ones here around the Toronto area. You see a decrease of range of 15%, and this is what we measured to be true. And winter average is -30, and very cold conditions, -45% in the range that you get out of the electric trucks. But those happen typically 5 to 10 days a year. So it is a concern. It has to be considered. So take buffers for this. But it may not be as big of a concern that some folks tend to say.
And for 5 or 10 days per year, it might still be possible to use a diesel truck on these days and still be fine with an electric truck.
You could find workarounds.
So more details even on the snowstorm. This is all the days of the Sleeman trial. So on average, we compiled what would have been their total range if they'd started at 100 and finished at 0% battery. You can see every day it's pretty much around 200 at the minimum 190 kilometers. And then there is this one day, which was the heavy snowstorm, a foot of snow. There was high winds. The truck operates really early in the morning. He leaves normally at 4:30 or 5. So by that time, the streets weren't cleared. He got stuck twice. And this is what happens, 125 kilometer total range on that day. So it's a huge effect when there is snow. So we said earlier, we lent them a 50 kilowatt charger. Why? Well, one, this is what we could afford in the project, but mostly this is what we believe is the best way to go. Slow and low, we always say, is what's going to bring the best ROI. Now, sure, 150 kilowatt charger sounds sexy. You heard about it from other presenters, other people who have trial trucks. But we always recommend 50 kilowatt, and we sort of prove that it works in these applications. If you have a truck that comes back home at night, stays overnight, you have the time to charge, certainly. Here our each line is a day, and we're pretty much, the yellow is when the truck is stopped at the depot, and the green part of the line is when it's charging. And this is what we actually measured in our analysis. So this is 1 week from Internord. We have the same from Cascades. Smart at even less power, 30 kilowatts, but a smaller battery. And then Sleeman here, and it's all the same. Every day, it's between 2 and 4 hours. So if the day was shorter, 2 or 3 hours. If the day was normal, around 4 hours charging. And the longest we measured was 7 hours out of a 14-hour dwell time. So pretty much at 50 kilowatts, you're covered for the needs of a truck that exists currently on the market. Pretty much 50 kilowatts times 10 hours, 500 kilowatt hours.
Now about the driver feedback. You've all heard it. Drivers love the truck, but we have data to prove it.
Exactly. So at the end of every single shift, every single day that a driver was operating the truck, we asked them to fill two major question survey. First one, how did you appreciate the truck today on a scale of 10? We actually, before we started the trial, we didn't tell them, hey, we want to sell electric trucks. We told them we want to present to the world how electric trucks are perceived, how you enjoy it or not. So we told them, drive normally, don't adapt your driving, and be honest on your evaluations. And 93% of the time, we got a note between 8 and 10 out of 10. There is 1.5 here. You guessed it, that's a snowstorm again. We couldn't get around that one. And then we asked them a second question, did I have to stop today during my day to replenish the battery? Was I short on battery? 95% of the time, it was all fine. And the 2 times they had to, well, one of the times at least, we asked them, we said, hey, how about you go over the range of the truck today? Like, are you game of trying this? And they did, and yes, of course, they had to stop.
So other trends, quickly. Well, for you, it might seem obvious at this point, but believe us, for us, it wasn't a few years back. Where we find winning conditions, it was a success. So when we planned for a success, it turned out to be successes. And that's a takeaway. It might seem obvious, but take it for granted, our checklist will lead to successes in your fleet.
Then we didn't cover it much yet, but the battery weight. Obviously, the electric trucks are a bit heavier. We measured that weight difference. This is between the trucks we sampled in phase 2 and the diesel ones, and the replacement we furnished for a month. But it didn't prove to be a problem, to be a weight penalty. In the end, we measured the payload during phase 2, we measured the payload during phase 3, and it was the same payload that they carried. The same company carried the same payload, and they never reached the limit of the truck, the GVWR. So it wasn't an issue for these trucks.
Quick word about energy costs. We all know that electricity is less costly than fuel, but by how much? Well, it depends. Depends on what? Typically on the tariff that you have with your local utility. And it's strongly influenced by the cost of kilowatt, not kilowatt hours, the kilowatt, which is the power. They call it demand charges. So have a look at that. If that doesn't ring a bell for now, it is important. But still, it will yield economies that range from 38 to 75%. This is what we measured.
One trend or takeaway we could take from this, and we already mentioned it, well, in winter, yes, you lose range. Yes, sometimes you'll lose up to 50%, but on average, you will lose only 30% of range.
Takeaway now, 3 things. EV trucks are viable, mature, and operators love them.
Finding or making winning conditions is the key. So find your greens, look into your fleet, look at the trucks you have, the ones who do under 200 kilometers, find those. These are the ones you need to start with, and then go on to the yellows.
And finally, what we've done with the fleets for our phase 3, our demo phase, is basically run small-scale pilot projects with them. And real-world experiences lead to clear-minded decisions in the future. So you should probably do the same if EV heavy-duty trucks interests you. You are better off deploying now and taking benefit of the grants that are available today. As everyone says, get acquainted with the truck now so that you have a clear path ahead of you. Now, lastly, I want to leave you with this. We are really proud of what we've done with the government of Quebec that's been able to fund this project, and we would really love to have this project, this kind of footprint that we shared today, this kind of project, demonstration project, reproduced elsewhere, and we would love to help in having this reproduced elsewhere in Canada or in the US. So you are welcome to meet with us after, and we'll be available to answer any questions you may have. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
So there's a mic at the back if anyone wants to chime in, ask a question or two.
I'll ask a question, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
And do they have better traction on the Route 40 across, you know, the West Island? My question is, what are the insurance implications as it relates to these fleets if you go to electric vehicles? Is that something we're still challenged with? Is there other savings? Because we discovered this when we put solar on the roof, that the insurance people said, wait, you have solar on your roof? Is the fire marshal? So what are those other implications?
Implications, we didn't measure these during our project. We didn't really take them into account because there was a lot of uncertainty or unknown because, as we mentioned, when we started the project, there was no electric trucks in the province. What we heard is that they are a bit harder and a bit more expensive to insure. Firstly, they are valued more, you know, they are worth more money. And the parts availability and everything is still an unknown. So I would say what we've heard is they are more expensive to insure, but we don't have numbers.
It greatly ranges. It goes with the size of the fleet. We've heard everything between doesn't make a difference in the size of my fleet, it's just a drop of water in the ocean, to, well, the insurance price is double.
Okay.
So it varies.
My other question is that the last slide has about peak reduction, which is very critical to us and also to Hydro-Quebec. Where is the savings as it relates to reducing peak? Because yes, at night it's the lowest, you know, charge. Is that where you're saying that if they would have charged during the day? Like, where is the KW saving because I electrified my truck?
Right. Well, in Quebec, aside from very less popular exceptions, there's no like an Ontario time of use tariffs. They call it TOU. So we don't have tariffs that vary from day to night or that go with the demand. However, we're charged very greatly for every kilowatt that we consume as a peak. So if you deploy chargers in a building and then the building already consumes a peak, let's say 200 kilowatts, and then you deploy a 50 kilowatt, then you're left with a 250 peak, maybe, if you happen to charge during the day while the operations of the building are running. So then you will get billed on this peak of 250 kilowatts, and it's expensive. While for the kilowatt hours, it's cents per kilowatt hours. So like, let's say 15 cents per kilowatt hours, it's roughly around $15 per kilowatt of peak. And you're charged that for every month. So if you do a quick decision of going with just the highest charger available that's compatible with the truck, and it happens to be a 150 kilowatt, then you triple your cost.
Okay, so that's your example of using the slow but sure.
Yes.
If you have the time.
Use the complete night if you're able to.
No, I think you show the challenges of, you know, what you have to sell. I was in Montreal where Hydro-Quebec said if everybody gets electric cars, electric trucks, we won't be selling to New York. So there's big challenges. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey folks, my name is Chinmay. I work with Uber Freight. I had a question about your TCO chart, the one that started negative and then went over positive. Curious if you can break down where that starting point was. So how do you start at like negative 100K, essentially? What goes into that?
Exactly. Well, this being a quite large project, we couldn't go around and shop for an individual truck, for an individual company and everything, etc. So we assumed fixed cost for a semi-truck, fixed cost for a straight truck, both in electric and diesel. And we worked out with the incentives in place in Quebec that it would cost around $75,000 more for the truck and the charging station, the 50 kilowatt charging station, once installed, after incentives. So they all start at minus 75. Obviously, we are aware that it's not the case for anybody precisely, but we had to start at one fixed point for the analysis.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up question, actually, and sorry I interrupted you. I'm curious what you all think around the sensitivity of some of these TCO analyses. Like if someone's buying instead of one, they're getting 10 or even 50 trucks, or if maybe they're getting a worse deal because their dealer is ripping them off, right? I'm curious to hear your thoughts a little bit on the sensitivity of some of the data or the error ranges and bounds of your project.
What's in the works for the next year is a summary report, a recap of everything we've discovered in this project, and we will include what's called a tornado chart. So you basically take one variable and you make them vary. So one variable at a time, basically show the effect of each. And we expect the truck price to be of high importance, and the grants as well.
Exactly. But for example, if the truck costs a bit more, then you'll start lower. It'll be difficult to rise. The most different thing, the thing that may vary a lot also is the fuel price. We also set a fuel price for the project. Some fleets have better deals because they're huge fleets and they buy a lot of petrol. They fill up at their own station. This will just lower the slope, making it longer to recoup.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Kermani from P3 Matic Fleet Automation. Great presentation, and very interesting, easy to follow. Have you used or have you thought about using, in addition to the study or in the industry, a kind of simulator, like a digital twin simulator for an fleet, to do all of these things for those people who want to do that and may not afford hiring a consultant yet? You guys, I'm sure that you are not cheap to hire, and want to use a platform to do this kind of simulation for the fleet.
I love your train of thoughts. You understood perfectly well our mission and our goal, and yes, it's in the works. Yeah, we plan to put out a tool that will be available for fleet managers or OEM or anyone basically that has to assess how to electrify a fleet. We want to build a tool that consultants or these people will be able to use.
Perfect. Thank
Keep
you.
in touch.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Feel free. Please do. All good? Well, we'll stay close by, so do not hesitate. Again, it's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone for attending our presentation and this event in general. Thank you.
Thank you.